Well, I want to welcome all of you to our first Dean Speaker Series for the 2015-16 academic year. And I'm excited about it because these things are ones for the community and for just faculty, students, staff, all to experience a little bit about what's going on in our community. We will invite people from not only in this region, but even also outside, in order to let you know what's happening within their world and to give you some inspiration about what you can do and contribute. This is a really exciting time to be a student, because once you are done with at least your first 4 years and start getting into the professional world of particularly in the STEM fields, there's so much interesting stuff happening. And I wanted to just talk a little bit about that before we have our keynote speaker. And we have a gentleman who is an alumnus of Alabama A&M, who's now working within NASA, making things happen, who will speak, and Dr. Ding will be introducing him shortly. This is one of the articles right here that essentially saying that a goal is for colonization or to put people on the surface of Mars in 20 years, okay? Now, the point about that I wanted to make is that 20 or say maybe I'll just say 30 years ago, I was you. And since that time, a lot of technology has been developed. We did not have smartphones at that time. PCs were just starting to make their way to the market. And all the technologies we take for granted for now were not here. My point is that you all will be part of the development of whatever gets us there to not only the next 20 years, but beyond. You all will be a part of it. And that should be very exciting to you all. And people like NASA and other companies who are involved in making this happen, they're looking for you. They're looking for you to be a part of this right now. So it's an exciting time to be you. And so what I'm encouraging you to do is to take your professions, and you're at the beginning stages of your professions right now. Take them seriously. Make the best grades you can in the class. Do the best work you can do for your homework, for studying. Get groups together, ask questions, come up with ideas, and go for it. Because this 4 or 5 years you're going to spend doing this, you're not going to get it back again. So whatever you do now, that's going to be what you do. So invest yourselves, invest your time, your efforts, everything towards moving into the career that you've chosen to be in. This is what I am encouraging you to do. And these are the things that we're doing on our end to try to create opportunities for all of you. So grasp hold of it and don't let it go. That's what I want to encourage you to do. So I just felt compelled to say those things before we continued on. We were having a great conversation in the office just talking about the opportunities that A&M would have. And how do we actually make it happen from within NASA, and what do we do on our end? And we're all trying to work together. I see Ms. Miller here from the Center for Career Development Services. How many of you students have registered with Career Development Services? All right, let me see the opposite hand. How many of you have not yet? Let me go on and see. It's okay. All right. So make that one of the things that you take away from this here today. Go register with them. Start getting your resumes polished and all that, because there are organizations like NASA who are looking for interns and summer and co-ops, even if you're going through your freshman year this year. There are companies out there who will bring you on in the summers and all that. So those opportunities are out there for you. And this is a place to start with career development services on that end, okay? Then as you connect with people like myself, the other faculty members who are willing to write letters of recommendation and say how wonderful a student you are because you come and talk to us, you've helped to shape your own future by communicating, we'll be happy to write those things if you do that. But if you stay in your own corner of the world, don't communicate, don't network, don't talk, don't do anything, nobody's going to know who you are when the time comes, okay? So these are opportunities out there. I hope I'm exciting you. I hope you're getting inspired to take some action once we're done here, okay? You going to do that? All right, good. Okay. Dr. Deng, I'm going to invite you to come on up. Dr. Deng, if you don't know, is one of the one of our respected, well-respected, come on over, faculty members here in the mechanical engineering department, as well as he is the faculty associate for research and scholarship for the college. And his role is to make connections for research opportunities from the outside to the inside, okay? So, but also you have some experience with our guests, so we're gonna let you introduce him. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Dr. Lam. This is the best time in our school, in our college, I think, in terms of opportunities. So this year, the keyword, everybody remember what is the keyword for our college here? Equipped, very good. Faculty member remember that. So I do hope everybody, we are on the same boat, we are traveling in the same directions. In terms of teaching, research, learning opportunities, this is the best time. Now, 12 years ago, I met a young man on the hallway on the mechanical engineering department, Mr. Christopher Randall. And he talked to me, he wanted to be a propulsion major on mechanical engineering. And then he sit in my fluid mechanics class. We find out this is the guy we want to invest because his working ethics. It's such an excellent student in there. He demonstrates he wants to learn. He has a desire to get things done correctly and on time with a professional attitude. So 2 years later, we sent him to Oak Ridge National Lab, and he made a splash in there. Oak Ridge National Lab want to hire him as a full-time graduate student. They want to pay him to completely 100% to go to graduate school, in the meantime working in there. Now competition comes in, NASA Marshall get him. So when he graduated from mechanical engineering, he worked for NASA Marshall there. For past 10 years, he has been an aerospace engineer, and he received numerous awards, especially this year in 2015. NASA Marshall has a special award called Marshall Innovation Award. He is one of the recipients. He also had a patent in there. He has an excellent paper, get award, and he has been the pathway program lead in academic affairs in NASA Marshall. So let's welcome our alumni, my good friend, Mr. Christopher Randall.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the warm welcome. It feels good to be back on campus in this engineering building, although I had a few shivers as I walked up, remembering some of those midterms and final exams that I had to deal with in Dr. Deng's class, but it was all worth it, and I hope that you all find your experience here at the beautiful Alabama A&M to be worth it as well. I want to first just thank you all for having me here, Dr. Glenn. I really appreciate the work that you've been doing to engage A&M with Marshall Space Flight Center. Dr. Deng, not only for being an outstanding professor, but also a mentor, and I really appreciate all of the things that you did to help push my career along. I brag about you all the time, and I was very excited to see that you were out there working at the center. Dr. Wing Chan, I'd like to mention him as well, who has been working closely with Dr. Glenn to bring opportunities to you all here as students to work with NASA. So I want to reiterate first a few points, just a few things that I heard from both Dr. Ding and Dr. Glenn. The first of which is the Career Services Office. So all of you know who Carla Miller is, right? You should, and if you don't, you need to get to know her before you leave today. Some of you may not know that Carla and I used to work together at NASA. She actually left NASA to come here to A&M, and she brought a lot of knowledge and expertise about what we do there to this university, so I hope that you take advantage of that. She saved my hide on many occasions over there working in academic affairs. My background is in engineering. I have a degree in mechanical engineering here from A&M, and I was hired on as an aerospace engineer at NASA Marshall. Since then, I've held several different positions, including that in academic affairs, and now working in our Office of Strategic Analysis and Communications, where I help the center plan strategy and develop programs looking out towards the future. And so I want to reiterate what Dr. Glenn said about registering with the Career Services Office. I'm assuming everyone here who is paying a lot of money for tuition to go to school and get an education is doing so not only for the purpose of being educated, but also to be employed. Is that correct? So if you are doing that and you are not registered with the Career Services Office, then you are making life a lot harder for yourself than it has to be. They are here to help facilitate that transition from a student to becoming gainfully employed and being able to pay off those student loans and family members who have probably supported you along the way. So the next time I come out, when he asks how many students here are not registered for career services, I would anticipate that I don't see any hands, correct? Good. So you all are going to make that a priority to get that done this week, I'm assuming. Awesome. You should be busy later this week. You're welcome. All right, so today I want to talk to you a little bit about, I want to give you a quick overview about Marshall Space Flight Center, the people and the work that we do, and the impact that this work has on this nation and even on this university. And I hope by the end of this relatively short presentation that you all have a lot of questions, that you feel inspired to consider a career with Marshall, and that you feel free to share any questions that you have with me about what we do. So let me make sure I'm in the right spot here. There we go. So Marshall Space Flight Center is one of 9 field centers in the agency. Now, I'm going to ask a lot of questions and hopefully get your participation by a show of hands, but it's important, one, to keep you awake, because I know it's after lunch and you probably are getting a little snoozy here, but 2, I want you to be thinking as we move along. How many people knew that there were 9 NASA field centers by show of hands? Only a couple of you. How many of you all knew that one of them was located right here in Huntsville, Alabama? Okay, still some didn't know that. So Marshall is a critical component to NASA as an agency. We are responsible for many elements of space flight, particularly manned space flight, and developing propulsion systems. Each field center has its own expertise. Marshall's expertise, as you can see here, is space transportation, propulsion systems, space systems, and science. And I'll talk a little bit about the 4 broad categories of work that NASA does as an agency. But if you look across the U.S., we do work in small spacecraft and aerospace, in atmospheric research and flight testing. We do deep space robotics through our federally funded research lab at JPL, human space flight in Johnson, engine testing in Stennis. We do launch operations here at Kennedy Space Center, which is, a lot of you are familiar with either Kennedy or Houston. But we also have a research center for aviation and other scientists at Langley and centers up in Ohio, as well as Maryland. We do work all over the country, and the impact that we have on the nation's economy and on the education that you receive is great. So NASA has 4 groups, 4 mission directorates. that support our mission of manned spaceflight. That is human exploration and operations, space technology, science, and then aeronautics research. Marshall is active in 3 out of these four categories of work. And so right here in Huntsville, we do work in each of those 3 categories. Our primary lines of business, though, here at the center are traveling to and through space, living and working in space, and then understanding our universe, understanding our solar system, and even beyond that. I'll talk a little bit about what we mean by these 3 categories. When we talk about traveling to and through space, we're talking about space transportation systems. How do we get off the ground and into space? You all are familiar with the space shuttle, right? One of our transportation systems. A little further back, we had the Saturn V, which you see over at the Space and Rocket Center. And currently, can somebody just shout it out? Do you know the name of the next transportation system for humans into space? Anyone? You are? SLS. SLS, an acronym that stands for, or abbreviation for Space Launch System. So SLS will be the next vehicle to take humans from Earth into space. And I want to comment on that because, and the significance of that before I go on to the other 2. Dr. Glenn talked about being excited, and I hope my excitement and enthusiasm for NASA and Marshall comes across in this presentation, because by far this is the most exciting time to work for NASA. This is the most exciting time in the history of space exploration. And in the next decade, what you are going to see right before your eyes will probably be the single most talked about, probably the single greatest accomplishment of mankind in the history of mankind. NASA's mission is to put human beings on another planet. And I don't know if you understand the magnitude of that and what all of that takes, but we're going to test SLS starting around 2017, 2018, and plan to put humans on board that ship in 2023, roughly. And those humans will be going further and deeper into space than ever before. It will change not only our knowledge about engineering and science, but it will shake the very foundation of what it means to be human. We're talking about people being born on other planets. We're talking about growing food and extracting water. We're talking about a new economy that will generate economic and stimulate economic growth beyond anything that you can even imagine right now. The numbers that we deal with today with respect to GDP will be dwarfed by the numbers that you will see because of this single human achievement. So I think that's exciting stuff. Now, you can be a spectator to this, or you can be a part of it, and you are in the greatest position that you can be in right now to be a student in an engineering program as strong as Alabama A&M's program in a city that hosts a NASA center. And I hope that by the end of this presentation, you all will be running to your computers to put your resumes together, polish those things off, and submit to every opportunity that we put out for any internship opportunities or job opportunities. Because this is going to happen whether you apply or not. The question is, do you want to be a part of that? Do you want to be one of the people to turn a wrench or to perform a calculation that helps us take the first human on to Mars? So think about that as we move forward. Living and working in space, we do that now. This is old news. Space station has been around for a long time, and we have humans on board 24/7, 365. That program is actually managed, the Payload Operations Center is managed right here in Huntsville, Alabama at Marshall Space Flight Center. And then understanding our world and beyond. Anybody ever heard of Hubble Space Telescope? Yeah, all of those fancy images that you see of the stars and the galaxies. A lot of that work was managed right here, and we are managing the next generation of Earth observation and space observation with James Webb, or the James Webb Space Telescope. So, traveling to and through space, we talked about SLS, but in addition to that, commercial space partner SpaceX is one of the folks who are actually actively participating in commercial crew and commercial space endeavors. And of course, doing research for the future, traveling to and through space requires us to come up with some innovative ways to get there. It takes most of the energy and most of the mass to get into space is all fuel. If you look at the space shuttle, that big orange tank, even the two solid rocket boosters on the side, all of that is just the fuel to get us out of the gravity well of Earth. And so developing new propulsion systems, cleaner fuel to be able to do that is going to be critical to us making advancements. But in addition, we do a lot of other smaller projects here. We do engine testing. We support commercial spacecraft. We do a lot of collaborative engineering work, not only with the Army and the DoD, but also with the universities. To talk about living and working in space a little bit deeper, supporting life in space, supporting the scientific research on the space station. In order for those astronauts to thrive in space, they have to have clean air and clean water. That water and that air is processed through a series of different filters using some special techniques that were all designed right here at Marshall. The space station's ECLSS, Environmental Control and Life Support System, was designed and built and tested right here at Marshall in Huntsville, Alabama. And the things that it can do are fascinating. And they have implications that go well beyond space travel, which you'll hear about a little bit later. And then finally, understanding our Earth and beyond. NASA satellites observe weather patterns, have been instrumental in collecting data to assess the effects of global warming. Our SEVERE program is something that has proven very valuable to the world, as we're able to observe Earth from space and be able to predict when storms that are going to devastate areas that don't necessarily have the resources to do mass evacuations quickly. And so we're able to give early warning to lots of countries. Discovery New Frontiers program, Chandra, which is one of our observation programs, and then of course James Webb. But Discovery New Frontiers, I just want to talk on that one briefly. You may be familiar recently about the whole buzz around Pluto, right? So Marshall Space Flight Center actually manages the resources for that deep space observation and exploration. The flyby of the satellite to Pluto that took the first images, close-up images of that planet, that program is managed here as well. And of course, James Webb, which is the successor to the Hubble Space Telescope, which will allow us to see even further out into the universe and get a better understanding of some of the early times, the early formation of our galaxy and our universe. So NERPS, and this one is interesting for those of you who not only have an interest in the technical arena and have the aptitude for that, but also have maybe a little bit of a political interest as well. The National Institute for Rocket Propulsion is housed here at Marshall as well. What NERPS is all about is helping to formulate national policy with respect to our space program. Space flight is a lot different than what you may be used to in industry. You know, when you talk about the airline industry, you have, you know, thousands and thousands of units of parts being produced every day to support the airline industry. When you're talking about space travel, you typically are talking about just a handful of components, and so the cost goes up exponentially, right? If you need to build 10,000 widgets, it's a lot cheaper to do that per widget than it is to only build 10. And so when you're only building, you know, 10 valves or 20 pumps for a vehicle, the cost can go up, and these designs, you know, space is unforgiving. And so the designs have to be top-notch, the tolerances have to be tight, and it oftentimes requires the development of specialized skills. Well, once the space program kind of winds down, a lot of times those specialized skills disappear in between programs. And so one of the things that NERPS hopes to do is work with some of our partners who use these types of equipment to help create a industry base that is sustainable for the future. So talking about how all of this work helps benefit life on Earth. So it's not just for space. The work that we do, you use every day, and you don't even know it. From some of the advanced vision screening tests that you may take, weather and climate change monitoring, to fire suppression systems, to put out large blazes in buildings, body armor, healing treatments for cancer. All of these things have spun off of NASA technology and research that was done in order to help humans travel to space, live and work in space and thrive in space and then return home healthy. These technologies, the licensing of these technologies and the impact that it has on our community is, well, I'll let you look at the numbers. So Marshall Space Flight Center alone has a $6.3 billion, that's billion with the B, dollar impact on the nation's economy, just this one field center. If you look at the people that are employed at Marshall Space Flight Center, the majority of them are employed in Madison County. The quality of life that you experience living in Madison County is tied to the number of good jobs that are associated with Madison County, the quality of the school systems, the communities that you live in. Marshall employees and the labor income associated with that support about 40,000 jobs nationwide. I want you to think about that a little bit. It's a huge number of people. There are only about, 320,000 people in Madison County, but yet Marshall is pumping out 40,000 jobs across the nation when you look at our contractors and things. And these numbers are only civil servant numbers. There are about 2,500 civil servants, but we also employ about another 4,000 contract employees who support companies like Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Jacobs. We spend about $2 billion nationally in terms of procurement opportunities, buying hardware. When I say procurement, I'm talking about buying hardware, buying equipment to support our mission. We're the third largest employer in Madison County. Redstone Arsenal is home to about 18 federal agencies and 17 additional agencies other than NASA. And we have the second highest concentration of high-tech workers in the country, and that speaks volumes for the level of education that's being produced here at UAH and at A&M. This community has a lot of brain power and a lot of brain trust that we need to tap into, and I'm hoping, what we hope to see is more students from Alabama A&M finding their way over behind the gates of Marshall Space Flight Center to support our space program. Just three tenets of Marshall, and I'm selling the center here because as important as the work we do is, I think it's equally as important for you to see a place for yourself there. Safety, diversity, and inclusion and collaboration are three of the big tenets of Marshall Space Flight Center. Safety is very important. Everything we do revolves around the health and safety of the astronauts that are going to go on top of that vehicle that you will be building if you choose to come work at Marshall. And that culture filters down into everyday activities at the center. Diversity, inclusion, and inclusion. Marshall is a diverse center, but it could be more diverse, right? And there are factors that are within our control and beyond our control that contribute to that. What I'm hoping, the message that I'm hoping that you take away today is that all of the factors that are in your control, I hope that you exercise whatever strategies you have at your disposal to figure out how to insert yourself into the future space program. The implications of what we are about to do in the next decade go far beyond anything else that is going on in this nation. I promise you. And I'm not just saying that because I work for NASA. To get a man to Mars and have them survive on Mars requires that you learn how to grow food in places that are inhospitable. It requires that you learn how to make the things that you need to survive out of whatever is there. Imagine being stranded on an island and you have to build shelter. You have to find food. You have to have medical equipment, and you have to make it from your environment. You're not able to take this stuff into space with you. It's too expensive. So those technologies, once they are perfected, are going to change the way we live right here. And that's something that I want you to take with you, a message that I want you to take with you as I leave here. What Dr. Glenn mentioned about our administrator, Bolden's visit, the buck stops with him, and when he says he really wants to see Alabama A&M as a prime contractor and working, and the students here working with NASA, that came from the highest level possible within the agency, and I hope you take that to heart. One of the conversations we had in the office a little bit earlier was how do we encourage students to apply? We have announcements that come out all the time for internship opportunities and job opportunities, research opportunities at Marshall. And oftentimes I don't see enough students from Alabama A&M applying to those opportunities. And I ask myself why, and I say maybe part of it could be, maybe you just don't know about them. So we have made a commitment to make sure that you know about every opportunity that comes out of those gates at Marshall. And when those opportunities come your way, we really encourage you to seriously consider applying for those opportunities. Another thing that's happening behind the scenes, and this is something I'm very grateful for, is Dr. Glenn and the engineering department here have taken a very active role in finding contract mechanisms to work with Marshall on developing some of these technologies, which will be very important for you with respect to your education in terms of projects for your senior design and student projects throughout your career, but also when it comes to employment after you graduate. I know they've been out to Marshall at least 3 or 4 times in just the last few months, talking to high-level executives and leadership across the center. And so I just want to commend you, Dr. Glenn, on that effort. And I just want to thank you for continuing to push some of those boundaries that we have in some of those areas. Before I go, I'm just going to show you one thing here. I'm going to let this play out, and after this short 40, 50-second video, I'm going to open up the floor for any questions that you have. What you're about to see here is a rendering of what will be the next manned spaceflight vehicle, SLS. This vehicle is already being built. It's already been designed and approved. It's being built here at Marshall. It's being built at Michoud Assembly Facility. As you can see from the design of that vehicle, the bulk of it is, as I mentioned, propulsion. It's all about getting off of Earth. And the work that you do here in this department is going to be critical to helping that get done. And so I hope that this presentation has inspired you to consider coming to work for us. And even if not, that you consider a career in aerospace and propulsion systems. I'd like to personally invite each of you out to come visit us at Marshall. I'd be happy to set up a tour for you anytime, and I'll talk to Dr. Glenn about that in some more detail, and we'll try to get some schedules set up so that you all can come visit us and see the work we do firsthand. So, any questions?
What are some of the effects of space on the body?
That's a very good question. Many of them are still unknown, but some of them that we do know about are vision. The lack of gravity tends to allow the muscles in your eyes and your eyes themselves to change shape, which causes vision impairment later on in life. You lose bone density, and a lot of that is because the nutrients and minerals in your body don't process the same way, and so you lose calcium. That's why you see the astronauts on space station exercising all the time. They're always on the treadmill. The more impact you put on your body, the more your bones tend to want to retain calcium. Without the effects of weight, your body says that it figures it doesn't need the calcium, and it sends it out, processes it, and metabolizes it, sends it out through your waste products. So it's just one example. Muscle atrophy is another issue. Oftentimes, astronauts return home and they can't walk immediately. It takes a little bit of time to be able to get their muscles turned back on.
What was one of the driving force behind you going into propulsion?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that question. So, as a young boy, when I saw the space shuttle on TV, that was the first thing that inspired me, was watching the space shuttle launches and saying to myself, oh, I want to do that for a living. I want to be an astronaut. I want to work on rockets. But then when I started attending school here, started getting a formal education in propulsion, and had mentors and advocates like Dr. Ding who helped push me along in the right directions, I realized that, oh, I can actually do it. It went from being more of a dream to realizing that I was in a position to actually be able to compete for those types of opportunities. But I think internally as well, just the curiosity, right? Just the curiosity to find out, what's out there, to find out, what are the boundaries of the human condition, and are we living to our fullest potentials? There were a lot of existential questions that I had, trying to just wondering, thinking about all of the space out there, and realizing that so much of it had not been explored yet. And so it was just, part of it was internal, but part of it was the reality of starting a program that equipped me to actually be in a position to do it. And all of you, if you are receiving an education in computer science, electrical engineering, aerospace engineering, mechanical engineering here at this university, you are being equipped to be able to contribute to this program. And so I hope you take advantage of it. Yes?
Good afternoon, Mr. Randall.
Thank you.
I'm a freshman here in mechanical engineering, and I would like to know from some of the innovations that you have taken part in, that you've been a part of, some of the things that you've researched. I would like to maybe know more information on what those exact things that you've been a part of. Or that you...
Sure, yeah. So I was hired on by the agency to support, before SLS was a program called Constellation, and there was a vehicle called Ares 1, and so I was hired on to develop valves and actuators for the propulsion system for Ares 1, and I worked particularly on the upper stage. It was a two-stage vehicle, so you had the solid rocket booster, and then you had the upper stage engines, and I worked on the components between the fuel tank and the engine. And so the valves that delivered propellant, liquid oxygen specifically, to the engine, I helped design. So I was fortunate enough to work with probably one of, if not the most brilliant valve designer in the nation, Jim Richard, on a patent for what's called a non-collinear valve actuator. I helped design the test article and the test setup for something called pogo suppression. Pogo is basically a phenomena that happens in liquid rocket systems where, because of thrust oscillations, the propellants tend to shake back and forth and makes the vehicle respond kind of like a pogo stick, where at the right frequencies it can pull the vehicle apart. And so we had to design a system to help dampen that oscillation out of our engine system. Most recently, I worked with a large team called the Space 2100 team. So I'll give a quick plug here. I'm one of those people that I talked about that, in addition to the engineering, I do have somewhat of an interest in, just kind of the politics around space exploration, and just from a national and a global perspective, its implications. And so I worked on a team called Space 2100, where we looked at what will the space economy look like in the year 2100. Basically, what will we be doing in space between here and the moon? And so I recently published a paper in the Journal of the British Interplanetary Society called Space 2100, a shared visiting exercise, which describes in detail that process that we use to determine, based on what's happening right now, and not knowing what technologies are to come, what do we expect the world to look like in 100 years? And it was a pretty fascinating look at what the future might be. And I tell you, it's nothing in that paper is so far-fetched that it might sound like it at first glance, but nothing in there is so far-fetched that it is unlikely to happen. I seriously expect all of those things to be a part of our community in the next 100 years. So if you get an opportunity to look that up, I think you'll.
It's available?
It is available publicly, yes. Any other questions? Before I go, I want to mention, in the hallway, there are some flyers and brochures for some of our internship programs. The Pathways Program internship and the Pathways Recent Graduate Program. Also, our summer and fall internships. Please take one before you leave. There's some NASA stickers out there as well. I just put the stickers out there to entice you to grab the papers on the internships, though, because that's what's important. As we make decisions about the future of our space program, those decisions are made by people. Those people represent all walks of life. Those people come from various universities in various parts of the country. And one of the things that I would love to see, and I think is important, not just from a selfish standpoint of being an A&M alumni, but I think I think it's important to the nation, is that we have representation from all of the best and brightest minds, all of the different thought patterns and processes that come out of academia, A&M being one of them. One way to do that is to get you all into our internship program so that you can go on to become full-time employees. Having advocacy, you know, we have tons of people from UH, we have tons of people from Purdue, and tons of people from Georgia Tech, but we don't have tons of people from Alabama A&M. And that is something that is important to me, and I want it to be important to you. And so I would like each of you to make this commitment, and that commitment is that before the end of 2016, that each of you put in at least one application for an internship opportunity at Marshall Space Flight Center. Whether you're a computer science major, whether you are mechanical engineering or electrical engineering, it takes all of those disciplines to get these vehicles off the ground. Physics, mathematics, chemistry, procurement, very important. Business administration, no matter what your major, all of those disciplines support this space program. So I hope that you all take that into consideration. Thank you for your time and your attention.
I want to also mention that we are arranging for a tour down at the shoe plant down in New Orleans.
Yes.
And we want to take a group of students to do that. So keep your ears open for opportunities like that. They're going to be, now one more question about the application process. If a student goes on, signs up, will they kind of be in the system that will send more, when more opportunities come, they get it? Or do you have to only apply when the opportunity comes?
So you have to set it up so that you will be notified. Once you go into the USA Jobs site and you set up your account and you apply for the first one, you can simply check off some filters so that anytime a new opportunity comes up, you will be notified.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes,
I know
please.
the answer to this, but I want you to answer. So Chris, you spoke about the Pathways program.
Yes.
But is that the only way students have an opportunity to come out there and work at NASA?
It is not.
So what's the other website they can go to and work as an intern?
Thank you for asking that question. Actually, if you go to intern.nasa.gov, couldn't have made it any easier, intern.nasa.gov, you will also find a system that allows you to apply for some of our other internship opportunities different from the Pathways program. In fact, I would even say you may find that the process to land some of those internships may be a little easier to navigate than, say, the Pathways program. There's some other requirements that come along with the Pathways program. So my advice is to apply to both. Always apply to both. Apply to the intern.nasa.gov. This acronym is called OSSI, O-S-S-I, One Stop Shopping Initiative. Apply to the internships that you see there, and then apply to any announcements that you see in USA Jobs under the Pathways program.
Right. Let's give one more hand to our guests.
Thank you.
Can't stress this enough. This is a Alabama A&M grad, okay? He's out there getting it done at NASA. We want to show our small token of appreciation, something you can remember by coming here and doing this for the speaker series. This says, presented to Christopher Randall, Dean Speaker Series, September 24th, 2015.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, well, we're going to wrap up. I want to thank everybody for being here. And I know you enjoyed yourselves, right? You got some stuff that you can use. You got some useful information. And, you know, we've asked Chris to stay connected with us. So he'll be here on the campus periodically. Talk to him about maybe setting up some mentoring groups, things like that, for all of you who want to get connected and just, you know, move your careers along by being connected to somebody who's doing it. You know, I advocate that over and over again to do that. You get connected to somebody who's doing it, learn from them, figure out how they navigated their path. So we're going to have more of that, and there'll be others from NASA as well as many other organizations that are supportive of us that will be here. So make sure you get connected to that. So once again, thank you. This has been the first of our Dean Speaker series for this year. We will have another coming in October and going on until November. We'll take the break for December and come back in January. So be on the lookout for a great schedule of that. So with that said, if I'm not forgetting or missing anything, I'm looking around for my people to make sure I'm good. Okay. So we have some food, some light refreshments out there. Please enjoy yourself, students. Load up. You know, you get you a good meal. I don't want to leave anything. So and spend some time. If you have some time to hang around and talk to some students, please do that. So with that, we're going to call this it for today. Thank you, everybody.